Hey everyone, this is Schleicher from Gaming Trend, and I'm here with Justin from Restoration Games, and we're going to cover some of their big games and then some of their expansions that they have. Downforce was a very successful betting game, and now they have a new track out for it. Well, actually it'll be two tracks. One expansion, but this is, it says a Danger Circuit expansion.
Right, so this is the Danger Circuit expansion, and a beautiful new cover by Tavis Coburn, our great artist. And when we released Downforce, the one thing we heard everyone say was, more tracks, more powers. So we listened, and we made an expansion that is a new double-sided board with 2 tracks and 6 more player powers. So we can put these out, and we can do a slow pan over those. People can get a feel for them, maybe. That one's not, that's an old one.
Okay.
And yeah, so we wanted to add some more variety to the powers so that people could mix them up with the 6 powers from the original. They're totally interchangeable. They're usable on the old board as well, so no problem there. And then the tracks we wanted to do, essentially bring some different mechanics into the game to change up the way the game was played.
So with this being the Danger Circuit expansion, are the powers a little bit more risky, or just kind of all over the place?
Not really. I wouldn't say that. It's funny. The powers are surprisingly hard to get just right. I mean, because they're a big part of the game, we might need to make sure that the balance is right on them. And so we have to sort of make sure that they're balanced with the old powers as well, so that not everyone wants to use the new powers. But there's all different kinds. There's some that are. There's a really cool one that's sort of in theme with the game, is called the Reckless expansion. And the way that works is oftentimes when you're playing the game, you'll move between 2 diagonal cards, the space between 2 diagonal cards, and keep going. And what the Reckless power does is if you pull that off, you get to move 2 additional spaces at the end of the turn.
Oh, wow.
So trying to set that up is challenging, but it can be really rewarding because you can use it over and over and over again. Whereas some of them are really very straightforward. For example, Ambitious, very simple. When your car passes a betting line, you get to move it 2 spaces.
Okay.
And so some of them are better if you have 1 car, or if you have more than 1 car, like the betting one. That way all your cars would get the benefit, and things like that. So we just tried to get a good variety so that people are actually picking their powers strategically, so that it's part of the auction, because that is part of the auction, part of the game. So that's a big thing. And then obviously the board. For this one, let's get these powers off of here. The big feature on this board are these loops. There's 2 of them right at the beginning of the track, and then we also have these split tracks over here too. But the cool thing about the loops is, on the original board, a lot of people were sometimes frustrated if they, especially when the newer players, when someone gets way out in front, people start betting on them, they start pushing them further ahead, and someone can win wire to wire. It happens. If you're not experienced with the game yet and realizing that you can still catch up and don't bet on them, don't push them forward, that sort of thing. But one of the things we wanted to do is, a lot of times some players will play their speed 8 cards really early on the old board and just get out and ahead. So what's interesting here is if you do that, that'll put you right around there. And the problem is, as you're working your way through the loop-de-loop, you can actually be blocked by the cars behind you. So it's a way to make sure that people in the lead, if the other players can play it right, they can sort of keep them in check without letting them get too far in advance. And same with the second loop too.
Yeah, and since you have it in the early part of the game, it doesn't incentivize players playing their A card for the car right
Right.
there.
You don't necessarily want to be the first one in the loop-de-loop, because then someone can burn off some other speed cards of yours if you're blocked. And then the other thing on the split sides is there's single lane and double lanes, and on both of them the single lane inside is shorter, but you can end up getting jammed up behind somebody, and you risk getting jammed. Whereas on the split, on the two wide side, there's more room to pass and things like that. So it's less risky, but it's longer versus a little bit riskier and shorter. And so that's that side, and let's flip it over. You can see the other side. So this is Crosstown Speedway, and I should mention that the board art this time was done by Tavis Coburn, our cover artist. He also did the art for the boards this time. So This is the other side, which is now upside down. Let's spin it around and not give everyone a headache here. So this is switchback pass, and you can see right away the interesting spaces here, right, are these dangerous spaces. And you'll notice that they have rubble in them, and they're sort of smaller. You can't fit a car in there, they're too small. And very simple the way it works, and that's one of the things we liked about these is the rules are very simple, but the impact it can have on play is very different, even from one side to the other. So the way these work is you can only move through them if you need to pass another car. So if I have playing orange, let's say, and I play speed 2 on orange, I can't go through there because you're not allowed to end your turn there. But if I play a speed 3 or higher, I can go 1, 2, 3 and pass them and keep moving. So it's a way to get around the other cars. Most of this track is only 2 lanes wide. There's just a few spaces, areas that are 3 lanes wide. So it's a very tight track. But these danger spaces let you get around. So that you're blocked less. So the big difference is in the original game, the other boards, either you're moving your full move or you're jammed up and you're like basically wasting a lot of spaces. So what the danger spaces do is you almost always can get around someone, but if you do, you're wasting a little bit of movement, not all of it, just some of it. And so it's really about maximizing that efficiency in the play. And so this is a lot of fun, this board too. So.
Cool, yeah. I mean, these are great little wrinkles for the tracks, and this will fit in the box.
Yep. So it comes in the expansion comes in this little cardboard sleeve. It comes with a 1-page rule sheet. Very simple rules. The board folds up. There's a 6-pack of the power cards that goes underneath, and then the whole thing is shrink wrapped, and it sells for $19.95. When you take it out, the board and the powers obviously will fit in the regular box just fine. And I'll be honest with you, it has room for maybe another track or 2 in there too. So we'll see what the future holds.
A little foreshadowing there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad to see that we're getting more tracks for Downforce. This is a great game. It works really well, and having this extra variety will help the longevity of the game.
Yeah, thank you.
So next up we have Dinosaur Tea Party, which is kind of funny to think of, these gargantuan beasts having a tea party together, being somewhat civilized, or hopefully civilized, but what kind of game is this? Because I can't even tell from this.
What is going on with this game? So obviously we take old games and modernize them.
Right.
This is based off a game from 1976 called Who's It, which was sort of a meteor multiplayer version of Guess Who, the old game with the kids game that's still around where, are you wearing glasses, and you flip the things down and all that. What was interesting about this game, fascinating really, is that it's one of the first deduction games where you're actually allowed to lie. We'll get back to that in 1 second. But basically what it is everybody, the original game, everybody played a role, like you'd be a gangster or a stuntman or a rock star or whatever it is. And everybody would try and guess who you were by asking you questions. Are you wearing a hat? Are you in a green room? You know, do you have a mustache? That sort of stuff. And you would answer the questions, and then basically if you guessed who everyone was, you won the game. Well, when we were looking to redo it, so 1976, you can imagine there were some very uncomfortable ethnic stereotypes in the original version of the game. And that was obviously one of the things we wanted to modernize and fix. But we figured when we were starting thinking about it, no matter how you slice it up, when you're dealing with people, like real people, there can be some awkward things you have to deal with. So it's funny because Rob Davio, my partner and chief restoration officer for us, he said, well, I've had this idea for a game. I don't know anything about it other than the theme that I've just sort of had in my back pocket for a number of years. And he said, Dinosaur Tea Party. Just the name was all he had. And we're like, oh, that'll work. So what it is we're all dinosaurs at a fancy tea party. And the problem is with our walnut-sized brains, we've forgotten everybody's name. And so what you're doing is you're trying to ask people questions and figure out who they are. And then all the dinosaurs have a series of traits. There's 20 dinosaurs. From Quentin over here, he's got a pet chicken, and he's wearing glasses, and he's eating. To Tabitha over here, she's got a lovely hat and some flowers. She's wearing jewelry, and she's drinking tea, etc. And so at the beginning of the game, everybody gets dealt one of these cards. It's the same dinosaurs on these individual cards, which also tell you what traits your dinosaur has. And so on your turn, you ask someone a question. You might say, oh, are you wearing glasses? Everybody has their own set of these lovely little tea bags here. with all the different possible traits in the game. So somebody would ask me if I'm wearing glasses, I might say yes and put it up in front of me like that. And we keep going around. Once you think you have figured out who someone is, you can guess who they are. If you're right, you get a sugar cube. If you get 3 sugar cubes, first person to get 3 sugar cubes wins the game. Now the interesting thing here is, like I said, going back, is that there's actually a chance to lie in the game. And the way that works is there are 3 quirks, which at the beginning of the game are randomly assigned to different dinosaurs. And these quirks, when someone asks if you're one of the dinosaurs that has a quirk, you answer according to your quirk instead of the actual answer. So Carlton here, if we were playing the game, he always lies. So if you asked him if he was drinking, he would say no, even though he actually is. And Lloyd would just say no matter what you ask him. He just no. And Reginald, he's going to switch answers every time. No, yes, or yes, no, yes, no. And what you have to do then is, as you ask people questions, you sort of have to suss out if they're one of the other dinosaurs, or are they answering according to one of the quirks. And that's sort of the little twist that makes the game a lot of fun. That came from the original game. We tweaked it up a little bit, randomized it, and that sort of thing. But the best part about the game, to be honest with you, is so light, such a light, simple deduction game. The art is fantastic. It's Matteo Scalasabrasi. I might have messed up the last name a little bit. Fantastic artist. And basically what we always encourage in the game is that you actually sort of play it in character. So if I'm Yorick and I'm asking you, pardon me, are you wearing a hat, sir? You know, your worst British accent, or your best if you're good at it. And everybody just gets into it, has fun. It plays in like 20 minutes.
Oh, cool.
Plays 7 and up, good family weight game.
Right, exactly. I can see my
But it's
son.
also a good filler game where at the end of the night when you just want to have a bit of fun. And retails for $20, so you can't beat the price.
How many players does it handle?
It goes 3 to 5.
Okay. So,
Yeah. And I should also mention, by the way, this is the only game that you'll ever get that has Rob Davio's recipe for oatmeal shortbread in it. So,
is that a super secret prized recipe or something?
well, it is now, right? I mean, the cat's out of the bag. But as we say in the rule book, you can't serve cheesy puffs, with such a civilized game. So
I see. Cool. Well, yeah, I like the theme of this, and it's a deduction game, but it's not like you have to figure out who is like a werewolf or whatever.
Right.
There's
a little structure to it.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very available for kids to be able to play it as well. I can totally see my son wanting to play this, especially with the dinosaur cards. Cool.
Yeah, how can we not play with
And finally, we have Fireball Island from Restoration Games, and this was a giant Kickstarter, to put it mildly. How much money did this raise?
So we raised $2.8 million through Kickstarter, and we've actually raised almost another $500,000 on BackerKit, and it is still going on right now. I don't know when this will hit wherever it's hitting, but it will be open. BackerKit pre-orders will be open through June 27th.
Okay.
And if you late pledge, you can still get everything that's available in the Kickstarter, with one exception that's not really important. But basically, all the important thing is you can get the Treasure Trove expansion and some of the other little goodies.
So for those of us who never actually played the original version or have the sentimental memories of Fireball Island, what's the mechanic? I mean, obviously there's these big marbles, but
Yeah, man. You're just adventurers running around this island trying to pick up these treasures. The Heart of Volcar right here, maybe a golden idol if you're playing with the Lost Adventure expansion. Grabbing these treasures, which are worth points. Also picking up these snapshots. These are cool pictures of Volcar from different angles around the island. And once you've got them, run back to the helicopter, get off the island, all right? The thing is, though, there's, depending on what you're playing with, we got like a tiger over here, just flip up and just knock you over. We got a boulder, just roll around, messing stuff up. Here, get over there. We got Ember Marbles, you can launch them and hit stuff. It's pretty great.
And then, of course, don't forget
Right.
the granddaddy himself, Volcar.
There it is. Yeah, so basically just trying not to get knocked over by stuff. You play a card on your turn, lets you move around. It also lets you usually launch a marble or launch a tiger or roll marbles to Volcar or whatever.
Cataclysms,
Yep.
Ember Marbles, launch the tiger, rotate stuff.
Yep. And the general concept is you want to knock people over and take their stuff and then get off the island before they return the favor.
so basically to win the game, you want to grab the treasures and whatever, and then get back.
Yep.
Right. So once everybody at the end of the game is triggered either by somebody getting back to the helicopter with 3 snapshots, or Volcar getting super angry and getting 4 marbles in the scar over here. And then there's 2 more rounds for everyone to try and get back to the helicopter. And then you count up the treasure. And whoever has the most points wins. I should probably worth mentioning, if it's not obvious, this is the prototype version of the board. Got little pieces of clay on it, like the prototype printed stuff, 3D printed Volcar and all that. But obviously it's in production right now. Hand painted by Rob Davio and Lindsay Davio. Yep.
So, and how are you making this so that the marbles roll differently each time?
Oh, man. All right. So when we first started the company, this was the most requested game for us by far, right?
Right.
What did I say? 10,000 requests.
And so I kept saying to myself, why has no one brought this game back? Because it's so popular. And we worked for a long time, for a year, to get the rights to this game. And we finally got it. And then we started working on it. And now we're like, oh, that's why nobody's bringing this game back. This was the hardest development project I've ever even heard of. It was nuts. So obviously you're designing in 3 dimensions, which is hard enough. And you can't just build a prototype board out of what stuff you have lying around the house, right? So this prototype board actually cost like $8,000 or something like that, because it's a one of a kind, which we can't end up using that mold for the final game because we've tweaked it a lot since then. You can see little pieces of clay all over it, and that's literally what it was. So we started off Noah from Game Trays, who does a lot of inserts and stuff like that. He did some of the initial 3D design work for the island trays, and then when we got close to the end, we actually switched to a design house that's right next to Rob's house, and he would literally drive over there 2-3 times a week. They had a room set up, and they had this 3D printed board with clay, and they would literally just roll marbles, put a little clay on, roll marbles, and it would literally be like, oh, it's jumping the space too much, so we need to shave off 1/4 of an inch or whatever. It was nuts.
It's a very difficult process. It was arduous.
Yeah.
Having done it the first time, I think we probably avoid doing it the second time. I don't think anyone will ever make Fireball Island again. I'll put it that way.
So I see like these trees have little areas sticking out. Are those
Yeah.
mobile, or do they just stay there to direct?
These are one of the additions to the game that we have. So yeah, you can rotate them. That's part of the game, and that way you can decide which way you want to send the marbles down. So the part of the cards in the game, one of the things they'll let you do is rotate stuff. So you can rotate trees, or you can rotate Volcar, and that adds a lot of variety. And so that was one of the major things that we wanted to do when Rob first sort of got his hands on it. We looked at the old game, and he said, there's a lot of uncertainty in what the players are doing, right? Because you're just rolling the die, and then you see how far you get to move. And there was a lot of certainty to Volcar. You knew exactly where he was going to be pointed. You put a marble down, and it would be going the exact location, exact path that marble was. And we said, first thing he said is, we need to flip that. We need the players to have more control over what they're doing, and have more uncertainty for what the marbles are doing. And that sort of kinetic chaos is sort of the key feature of the game.
I would say honestly that got us rolling, and everything was downhill from there.
Yeah, between that and then the design, the 3-tray design that Mike Gray.
So
the 3-tray design by Mike Gray was the other key, I think, that made this whole thing work.
Absolutely.
So is the box going to be this wide, this big monstrosity?
That was Mike Gray's big contribution. So the original game is huge. You could surf on it, and it would not work in today's marketplace. And so one of the first things we had to do, we wanted to make the island bigger, faster, cooler, but fit in a smaller box, which sounds like some sort of bizarre nanotechnology thing. But what Mike came up with is this idea of having these 3 separate trays that are separate like that, and in the box they can nest on top of each other so they can fit in a smaller box. But then you stack them to play the game, and you get that height and that additional gravity, make the marbles go faster.
Cool. So you said this is available on BackerKit now. How much is it to get it while you still can?
Yeah, so that's the reason to go to BackerKit, because the MSRP for the base game is $75. It'll be out around November in time for Black Friday. That's the plan. But if you go to BackerKit and pre-order now, you can get the base game for $60.
Oh wow!
And then also, like I said, you have access to the Treasure Trove, which is a 54 card set of mini expansions that you can slot in different cards into the main game that'll make it play differently. And then there's the 3 additional expansions we have that'll be available are the Wreck of the Crimson Cutlass, which adds a whole separate island to play on that you can get to through the caves with our pirate ship. There's the Last Adventure, which lets you add a 5th player to the game. Player powers and all kinds of stuff. The Golden Idol and all kinds of the Boulder. And then the last one is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Bees, which adds Crouching Tiger and some not really hidden bees, but the bees, you know. And so all those are fun. So the other cool thing about going through the pre-order is if you pre-order, you get everything at once when it ships in November.
Okay.
If in retail, we're releasing the base game and the Last Adventure expansion at launch, and then the other 2 expansions will roll out at the beginning of next year. So
Cool.
The publisher is.
And so, so you plan on having this available at the end of November, and like you said, in time for Black
Right.
Friday. And you said 4 players, but you can have a 5-player expansion for it.
Yeah.
And how long does it take to play roughly?
you know, JR, you played hundreds of games of this, so
Yeah, so it's about 45 minutes to an hour. If everyone knows how to play, if you've got all the expansions mixed in, it's about an hour. If you're talking just the base game, 4 players, it could be as short as 30 minutes.
Cool.
Depends on how angry Volcar gets,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about games. There's always some unknowns there with it, and that's what makes it exciting. So, well, thank you guys for showing us the prototype here and being able to get a good look at it, and I'm looking forward to its final release.
thank